Welcome to the world of real entertainment. You are about to experience Collapse of the Kingdom, the 5th volume of All the King's Men, a revealing look into the private life of Elvis Presley. Don't miss the rest of this exciting series, available now exclusively on home video. And watch for Volume 6, The Legend Lives On, available only in All the King's Men collector's kits. Ask your dealer how to get yours. Stay tuned for an exclusive preview following the show. The world remembers Elvis Presley as the king of rock and roll, but he was much more to 5 loyal friends. Cousin Billy Smith, teenage companions Lamar Fike, Marty Lacker, Red West, and Red's cousin Sonny West. Because of their fierce devotion to Elvis, the 5 became known as the Memphis Mafia. Closer than brothers, they served Elvis as trusted confidants, court jesters, and tireless protectors. Join them now for the provocative, hilarious, moving, and endlessly fascinating tales of All the King's Men. Here for the first time on video. Kingdoms rise and fall, kings flourish, then fade. But Elvis Presley's reign as the king of rock and roll lives even to this day, on recordings, in films, and in legend. The legend tells of a triumphant career disintegrating at the last into self-parody. Elvis in his final days becomes a mockery of himself. Bloated almost beyond recognition, his performances degenerate into travesties. The end, brought about by drug abuse, seemingly comes overnight. The truth is harsher. Elvis's drug habit fueled his success as much as it ensured his ultimate ruin. Once one of the best-kept secrets in show business, the king's dependence on prescription medications took root long before the kingdom collapsed.
Well, it started out with diet pills in the Army, just to be up and, party.
Right.
And then it developed into other things toward the end.
Oh, listen, we used to take some of those diet pills. That teeth sound like Xavier Cugat's rhythm section.
But the thing about that is that we started off with the diet pills, but then pretty soon, in order to go to sleep, you got to take sleeping pills to counteract the diet pills. Then you take the sleeping pills, and you got to have something else to wake up. And it's just a vicious circle. And then you get into the pain pills, because when you start taking too many diet pills or sleeping pills, you get up and you got a terrific headache, or you're grouchy, or whatever. I mean, those things are no good.
And Elvis got to a point to where he felt like he knew about as much as the doctors, He read about the side effects and what you could...
He was a walking PDR, though. He had his own PDR upgraded every month. And when Elvis went to a doctor, he would know what to tell the doctor to get. I've got a pain in this knee, and because he had read what medication says that he needs to get that sort of for this pain. And the doctor said, okay, well, you need that. Oh, yeah.
There was a show in the Sahara showroom. This guy, I don't know his name, the one that pulls people's ties off without them knowing it, and their watches, and he's a pickpocket. So he comes out in the audience. He's pulling people out of the audience. Well, that night, Elvis, before we went down, hands me his pill box. And he says, you hold it, a little black one. And I had it in my pocket. And I was watching this guy, and I'm getting scared, see, because I think he's going to come to our table, he's going to pick my pocket and come out with the box. And I said, I forgot who it was. I said, here, you take it. And I'm trying to give it to him under the table. He said, no, I ain't going to take it. and we were doing that, and Elvis looked at me. He said, put it back in your pocket. He said, he ain't going to come over to this table like that. He was always confident, but yet he had me hold the box.
Another story. I might not tell this, but I can't resist it. We had gone in to see Johnny Ray, where we was into our drinking thing at the time. Well, a whole lot of us got lit, to say the least. Anyway, Alan had to use the bathroom. So did Elvis. They started to get up, and they couldn't. So believe it or not,
Oh, no. Oh, no.
they raised the tablecloth over. And they're taking a leak right here. Well, this woman on down front, she kept lifting her feet. She said, my feet are getting wet. Boy, you talk about a group of guys getting up and trying our best to get out of there, man.
Oh,
we did.
man.
Did drug and alcohol abuse make Elvis think himself above the law? A king is the law, and Elvis actually thought of himself as a lawman at large. Elvis was in fact deputized in several jurisdictions. It only encouraged the king and his men to act like cops and flash their badges.
We were leaving Graceland. We were going uptown. I don't know where we were going, but we were speeding. And the cops, pulled us over. Well, Elvis had a badge, and we were known by most of them. So we pulled over, and laughing and whatever. We all got out of the car, and at the time, I had the karate studio, and I had a bunch of policemen were taking karate there. So I looked at them, and I thought, oh, those are a couple of my students. We're going to play a little trick on them. So the cops got out of the car, the lights flashing, and we were walking toward them. And just as we got close, I ran around and grabbed one of them, and Elvis did some karate moves. And I let the guy go, and I didn't know him who the hell he was. And those guys were standing there and said, what the hell? But then they recognized, thank God. Oh, man. They recognized Elvis, and they said, what was all that shit? I said, I'm sorry, man. I thought you were so-and-so. And he laughed, said, well, I'm not, and you're lucky.
One night in Beverly Hills, this attorney is in a Mercedes, and we're in the Mercedes limo, and we're drag racing through the streets of Beverly Hills, and this attorney's doing it too. He just take off fast. I would say, catch him, Gerald, and boy, we'd take off, and we're going through Beverly Hills, come to another stoplight, whoom, whoom, we would go again. And this is a well-known attorney that had worked for Elvis time to time, and they got away with everything in there.
Gerald was driving the limousine, and as we came out of there, we turned in a service station. Two guys were out there just about to get in a fight or scuffling or playing. Two guys that worked there. He had to see what, he had to go see what, he thought one guy was picking on it. He said, Gerald, turn this sumbitch around. Yes, sir, very good, sir. He turned the limousine around, pulled up in the parking lot. Gerald jumped out and opened the door. We all piled out. I said, what's this all about? I said, hey, nothing, man, we're just having a little argument. And they recognized who it was, but they weren't too happy with it. But anyway, we got out of it. But the funny part of this is Gerald, with his little black suit and his hat, gray hair, glasses, was standing with the door. As we piled back in, he said, very good, sir. Closed the door, got in, we drove off.
Yeah, Elvis pulled over a car that was speeding one night. He had that blue light on, and he put it up there and said, get up there. And he went on, yeah. And we got up there beside him, and he pulled over, and Elvis got out and told him, boy, you better quit speeding. I have you put in jail. He said, Elvis? He said, yeah, Elvis, I'm also chief deputy. He had a chief deputy badge. He said, I'm telling you, I'll get you put in jail. You slow down. We were speeding, but this guy went by us like we were standing still.
Well, there was another time he was going to do the same thing, and we were in the limousine, and he was driving, and we pulled up beside him, and he said, the guy just kept going. He got his gun, roll that window down, roll that window. And rolled the window down, he stuck that gun out, and that car took off, and no way in hell we would. I was trying to catch him, but no way. That car had afterburners, man.
Elvis's enthusiasm for law enforcement matched his passion for guns. He maintained an extensive collection and seldom went unarmed.
We're taking off to have the FBI tour up in Washington, D.C.
Oh, I remember that.
And this is where the gun situation is really funny. We have a limousine meet us, about 5 of us, and we arrive at the FBI building. An agent meets us out there and says, guys, if any of you are carrying any arms, we'd appreciate you leaving them in the car. And we said, yeah, okay. So I took out my one gun, Red took out his. Elvis was standing there, and the guys watching Elvis. He went 4, 5, 6 guns out there, and we thought that we had it. And I thought, he's got that damn Derringer in the foot, but I wasn't going to say anything. And he didn't say anything either. So we go inside, and we're in areas where the guests aren't allowed. And we're in there, and all of a sudden Elvis had to go to the bathroom. So I went with him. We asked 2 agents, escort us, because the area we were in, you just didn't wander off by yourself, not even Elvis. So we go into the bathroom, and Elvis goes into the part with one of the stalls, and these 2 agents were sitting there kind of talking, and Elvis comes out, drops something, he bent over and .25 automatic hits the floor, man. Fell right out of his waistband. And he looked at it, the agents looked at it, and they kind of looked off, looked at each other. They didn't say nothing. I didn't say nothing. I was just, oh, sorry. Put that back in and did that little grin and went over and washed his hand. Nothing ever said, and we walked back out there. They didn't ask him for it or anything.
Charmed life.
He had a charm. I mean, it's really like he had a guardian. When you thought the world was going to end,
Actually, God
something would
watched over
happen
him
to
there.
turn it around in his favor.
We used to come back off of tours with the whole bottom of the airplane full of television sets because Elvis would shoot them out.
Think about that. How many people would like to shoot TVs or shoot things sometime? But man, that's $500, $1,000 I'd have to put out to get another one. Didn't bother him. He was in that unique position that quick it could be replaced. Whatever he destroyed, that quick it could be replaced.
We were just bored to tears one day, and I said, why don't we just take off and go somewhere? I said, let's go to Denver. I said, if nothing else, maybe, go up to Aspen or something like that. And I said, there's a place there that's got great peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and we had the plane catered with Dom Perignon champagne and long peanut butter and jelly sandwiches they brought from the thing. It was a $40,000 turnaround, but it sure was a lot of fun.
I think the saddest time was Hawaii and the satellite show. He was in the most fantastic shape before that show. He got in shape during the show. All the rehearsals were great. He was looking fantastic. And we were all, everybody, including him, he was so happy with the show, and we were all having a great time. Our wives were over there and everything. And the next morning after the show, we were supposed to go see the Pearl Harbor Memorial, which Elvis had a lot to do with building. And we were all anxious and happy, and we all had breakfast. We came out of our rooms to go to Elvis's suite to get him, and we kept knocking on a door and knocking on a door. And then finally, Linda Thompson, who was with him, came to the door, and the look on her face, we knew that there was something wrong. And she said, no, we're not going. And we said, well, why not? And she opened the door wider. She said, well, he's out on the balcony. We went out on the balcony, and he was sitting there, had a towel wrapped around his neck, and he was sweating bullets. And when he opened his mouth and started talking, we knew he had gone right back into it because he was just slurring his words so bad. And I think every one of us, our hearts sank.
He always had to have a challenge, and every time he had a challenge, he rose to the occasion. It's okay, the career's gone down a little bit. I got to bring it back. Got trimmed. We worked hard at it, and he rose to the occasion and showed what he had.
By 1974, with weight problems and boredom leading to greater drug dependence, Elvis desperately needed such a challenge. It came as an opportunity to return to the movies in a serious role, a dream he had long cherished.
Barbra Streisand came to Vegas, wanted him to do A Star Is Born with her. And they talked for hours about this. And when it came out, we were anxious to hear what happened, and Elvis said, we're going to do it.
Yeah.
I turned around and started, right, man, okay, something different.
We were excited all night.
Yeah, all night talking about it because we could see a lift coming,
Elvis really got to thinking about what it would involve, how to get in shape, because he and Barbara both, he even admitted that him and Barbara both admitted that they would go to a fat farm, is what they call it, fat farm, and work out and lose weight and everything before the picture. So he's got to thinking about this would involve a month or two, then shooting for a couple of months, and then another couple of months he knew how he had to really get down for weight and everything and get his mind right. And I think that just represented a challenge, and it's the first one that I can think of that he just didn't get up and meet.
The next morning, we walked in, Elvis was head down, looking dejected, and then I said, you all right? Oh, yeah. Well, did you talk to Colonel about doing the movies? Yeah, he decided we don't need to do that.
Chris Christopherson wound up in the role intended for Elvis, a role that might have even provided a life-saving challenge had Colonel Parker not killed the deal. But for the Colonel, controlling Elvis meant everything.
Colonel loved it that Elvis and his father didn't know nothing about business and didn't really know that much about the business side of show business. And he didn't want him exposed to people who did, because he was afraid of, I think, of what he would learn or maybe pick up from people, especially somebody like a Barbara Streisand, who, you know, she's a smart lady. And the Colonel always wanted that control factor. That's why he kept saying, anybody approaches you, you come to me. You send them to me. Let me take care of my end. You worry about singing on the stage.
Well, every manager does that with an artist. They want them to come straight to him. Don't go to the artist.
It all can be to a different degree.
It was still that loyal thing, too. I mean, you got to realize when he came along,
total loyal,
too, you know, and he had this, that's right, just was completely loyal to Colonel. And Colonel did everything in the earlier days that he said he would do. And Elvis just hated to break that off. I mean, he didn't really know how, and he didn't know if he wanted to.
They had one big blow-up. I don't know how this came about in Las Vegas, and Elvis actually fired him. He said, well, you can get the hell out of here.
They started, you could hear them, well, I'll have my own press conference in the morning. You know, they're each talking about their own press conference. And he'd come out and walked out and fine, I'll make up a bill, show you how much you owe me, and then we're done.
He was smart enough, he didn't give the bill to Elvis, he gave it to Vernon.
Oh, absolutely.
And that scared Vernon to death.
Vernon saw it, man, you could have driven an Oak Star up his ass. I mean, he could not believe how much, that's a lot of cash.
There's no way they owed him $2 million.
Elvis told me, when Vernon told him, he said, asked him how he wants it, all at one time or installments.
Boy, I said, God, it's over, man. Now we can do some things, you know.
Had we gone to Europe, Elvis would have been alive at least another 10 to 20 years.
And Elvis said, I want to tour everywhere. Japan, Europe, Australia. He kept saying, man, there's a whole world out there, Colonel. Can't do it. Can't handle security. Can't do it.
Which the biggest bunch
that's ridiculous.
A bull.
The Colonel wouldn't do one because he couldn't get a passport because he was an illegal alien.
The first suspicion of that was in Germany when he was in the Army. The Colonel would send messengers over there with these contracts and these things to do, but he would never come. I think I told Lamar that there's something strange here.
Colonel was not who he was. His name was Andreas Wilhelmus van Kick.
Elvis didn't know. He couldn't have known either that the Colonel couldn't travel overseas.
That's the one piece of information that I can recall now that I did not know, because, see, Colonel served in the Army for the United States.
Listen, I went to Breda, Holland, Colonel's hometown, went to his house, and I met his sister, and she walked into the room, and honest, it looked like Tom Parker. And I called him on the phone. I said, Colonel, I said, why didn't you tell me you were Andreas van Kick? He said, you never asked me. That was his answer. And it was just almost total shock, because he was not, see, we tracked his Army records. He jumped ship twice. He came from Holland the first time, and he got shipped back out again. Then he came back again and jumped ship again and joined the Army. And we tracked his records all the way back to World War I, and we could not go any further, otherwise they had been destroyed. And he took the name Tom Parker from a guy that had a pony circus. And that's how he got the name Tom Parker, but his name was Andreas van Kick.
And like all of us, Elvis just didn't know.
So Elvis and the Colonel had me going in between them.
Elvis did not talk with Colonel one more time until a couple of weeks later.
He was learning to finally to stand up to the Colonel. But it was still not enough yet to make
break him loose. It's like a lot of things with Elvis. He got thinking about it, you know, and the Colonel knew his finance position. The Colonel could make him money on the tours and stuff. He got thinking of going with someone else, and I think there would have to have been so many changes.
If Elvis had lived, it would eventually have happened.
So Elvis says, we got to call that old son bitch, Sonny. I said, call who? I didn't know what he's talking about. He said, the Colonel. I said, I got to talk to him. I got to talk to him and tell him that it's going to be all right.
He was afraid of going out on his own, and he's going always that fear. He thought, maybe I better stay with him. I put up with this, but to stay where I'm at.
When the pressures of Las Vegas grew too intense, Elvis would retreat to the relative serenity of his Graceland estate. Then there came a day when even that refuge offered little comfort.
We had a tragedy happen outside of Graceland a woman and her little son, about 3 or 4 years old, were crossing Elvis Presley Boulevard, and she was also pregnant with another baby and got hit by a car and killed. And I missed it by less than a minute or two, because I was coming down, my wife, my little son in the car, and I see people out there in the middle. The car stopped, and there's someone, and I said, oh man. So I pulled out there, and I had a blue light. Some of us had blue lights that we could put on dashboard that the sheriff's department had given us. I put that on the dashboard and got the car parked so that people could see the blue light. And I went over there, and the little boy was laying there on his stomach, and his head was turned, and he didn't really look like any big serious injuries, but he was dead. And I walked over to the mother. Her eyes were rolled back, and she was just moaning, and she died on the operating table at emergency. So I told Elvis about it, and that night, and I said their daughter and her husband had just gone to left to go to Texas, but the woman's husband was there, and he had a serious injury with a head injury or something, not from this, but from before. So the long story made short, I went to Elvis. He said, Sonny, pay for any flight or any way for them to get back here, pick up the hotel, put them in a motel, and any medical charges, get it done. Complete stranger. All I did was tell him about it. It just broke his heart. But that's the way Elvis was, and never wanted anyone to know about it. Just do it.
Elvis's generosity could assume elaborate dimensions, overwhelming friends like Sammy Davis Jr. with lavish gifts and heartfelt sentiment.
Sammy, when he gave him that ring there, he said, there's a gentleman here beside the stage, and then he thanked him before he named him about what he did when he went down to do the Frank Sinatra special. Sammy's the one who said, man, don't be nervous, just do your thing, man. And he kept, because Elvis was very nervous. So Sammy talked with him and got him to do it. And Elvis said, I never forgot that, and I never will. Here, Sammy, thanks. And he hands him this huge ring, and Sammy started crying.
Christmas time with Elvis naturally meant extravagant gifts. But Elvis had a way of handling people who got too greedy.
We were getting ready to exchange gifts, and Elvis was upstairs, and he comes down, and he's got all these envelopes in the hand. And there was one guy in particular who basically showed up at Christmas, if no other time, because he wanted to see what, Elvis was going to give him. And so Elvis was very dramatic, and he says, look, he said, I've done something special this year because I really feel you deserve what's in this envelope. And he hands them out to everybody. And this guy in particular, I'm looking at him, and everybody's looking at him, and he's saying, oh, yeah, Elvis, which is the way he sometimes would talk. And he's opening up the envelopes because he's expecting something really special, and he pulls it out of the envelope, and his eyes just couldn't believe what he was looking at. It was a 50-cent McDonald's certificate.
Although never mean-spirited, Elvis met with one case of greed that even he could not forgive.
There's a guy working for him that first started forging Elvis's name on personal checks of Elvis that he carried around in his briefcase for him in case he never ever need to want something to buy it. And he's in Vegas, and he's losing the money that he makes, his salary and per diem money and everything, and then he started forging Elvis's name on a personal check. So he was let go and told to go ahead and go on back to Memphis. Then, before he was going to leave the next morning, Elvis found out that this guy had also gone into a private compartment of Elvis that he had in there and found some personal pictures, Polaroid pictures, and took some of them. Came out and showed them to some of us. And we said, whoa, I don't want to say what they were, but... So anyway, Elvis found out about this, and he stewed on it all night. And it just got him more and more and more mad. So all of a sudden the next morning, he's up way earlier than he normally gets up. So Red and Elvis went on out there to the plane, and Elvis holds that badge up with his ID and is telling him to, whoa, stop the plane. Well, the pilot thought that Elvis had missed the flight. He recognized Elvis, so he called back to the ground crew and told them to roll the steps back up. So they did. Elvis and Red went up the steps, stewardess up there opens the door, and they go inside. In the meantime, the pilot is there now, and Elvis comes up there and says, well, sorry, sir, to stop the plane, but we're looking for a fugitive. And he said, a fugitive? He said, aren't you Elvis Presley? He said, yes, but I'm also an agent. He showed him that badge, federal agent, and we're looking for this guy. He said, well, was he armed, or is he dangerous? And Elvis said, no, he's not dangerous. It's something we need to take him in for some questioning and everything. And he said, well, I want one of my officers to go back there with you. So Red and this officer from the plane started back that way. And so Elvis asked the pilot, says, what time y'all supposed to get in Memphis? He said, Memphis? He said, Mr. Presley, we're going to San Francisco. Elvis said, Red, come on, we got the wrong damn plane. And he called him back up, and Red come running back up, and they ran off the thing and came back in. I, in the meantime, come up behind him. About that time, here comes Elvis. He said, walking up, and he said, James, you got the right to and all that other shit. Get him in the car and let's go, guys. He couldn't think of the Miranda rights, and it was just all that other shit. Let's go. So we get in the car. Now he's scared. We start driving away. Red's in the back with him. I'm sitting up here driving, and he's sitting here, and all of a sudden he says, y'all taking me out to the desert, ain't you? We said, no, James, we're not taking to the desert. Well, I want you to know, my daddy knows what time that plane comes in. If he doesn't, if I'm not on it, he's going to want to know why. And I said, well, we'll let him know why. And I said, James, you're not going anywhere. You're going to the hotel. Elvis wants to talk to you. When we got up there, here comes Elvis out of that bedroom, steps down those 3 steps, man, started walking, kind of tugs at his belt there and walks up to him and said, why? Why did you do it? And James just sitting there, won't look up at him or anything. He goes, son of a bitch, why? Like that. And Red and I both jumped. It was real quiet. We both jumped straight up. And James, I don't know. And all of a sudden he says, tell me. And he reached over and he popped him. And a little ring, it had made a little scratch thing on his forehead, a little trickle of blood starts to. He said, damn, see what you made me do, James. Someone get me a wet cloth. He was upset. He didn't mean to cut him or anything. So whoever was there went in and got a washcloth out of the guest bathroom there, and he starts cleaning up James's head, trying to stop the blood and everything. And then he just kind of sat back on the coffee table and said, James, why? Why would you do this? He said, man, I thought I gave you guys anything you wanted, and then you turn around and you steal from me, and you get in my business that you shouldn't be in. And James starts crying and saying, well, I didn't mean to. Elvis, I guess I have a gambling fever or something. And Elvis said, that's not what I'm talking about, James. I said, that's one thing. I'm talking about taking my private possessions. He was thinking about those pictures. What was he going to go do with them or whatever, and he wanted to know why, and James couldn't answer him, really just said, I don't know, I shouldn't have, I'm very sorry. Elvis was warming up towards a guy. Now he was feeling sorry for him. You know, he'd gone past the anger, and now it was the other way. And Red and I looked at each other and said, Elvis, we knew where he was going. And he looked and he said, you're right. I said, James, just go on back home, go get your plane, get on back home, keep your mouth shut, go out there and Daddy will give you your pay, and then that's it. And you just keep your mouth shut. And he did. He went back and that was it. But
he knew he was finished.
Yeah.
He knew he was going, he'd never find him in the desert.
That was the funniest part.
The years of excess and wild living took their toll. And it did not go unnoticed in the media as an overweight Elvis turned 40. Johnny Carson's wisecracks on that occasion got big laughs all over America, except around a certain TV set in Memphis, Tennessee.
Elvis, they liked him, watched him all the time. And this particular night, he come on and he said, they was talking about entertainers and stuff like that. And Johnny Carson said, yeah, I hear Elvis is fat and 40. And he reached over and he got the remote control and he turned it off and he said, I never did. That somebody never was funny to me. He said, I never did like him. Oh, man. He said, I may be fat, but damn it, I ain't ugly. He would look in the mirror and say, I am one good-looking son of a bitch. He didn't mind telling you. He had an ego. I mean, as big as and he would tell you in an instant. I mean, he would rear back at his, the heaviness or whatever, and look in the mirror, and he didn't mind telling you, I am one good-looking son of a bitch.
Now let me tell you something. Elvis called me up to come upstairs one morning, and he said, "How do I look?" I said, "You're good. Why? He knows anything different?" No. He said, "My face doesn't look..." "Oh, yeah, you've lost a little bit of weight. It looks good." And then he said, "Sonny, look here." It's scarred back here in his hairline. He'd had a facelift. Here, pulled his cheeks back. And I said, "Oh, yeah, man, that looks great."
He asked me the same thing. He said, "You see anything different?" I started looking around the room. I said, "The room don't look no different to me." He said, "No, no." And you know, he was sitting in his bed and he went like this. He raised his head. And he said, "Now, do you see anything different?" And I looked around the room again, because he looked the same to me. And then he finally just started going like this, you know, patting his eyes. And he says, no, I had stuff done to my eyes. And I looked at it and I said, "Looked like the same old Elvis to me, but you look good."
Oh, he'd have stretched that skin tighter than a gnat's ass across the bass drum if he kept on, because he just kept on and kept on and kept on.
He's done it under my name. I get a bill from Blue Cross, and it comes in and said, "This is not covered. It's cosmetology, see?" And I said, "I can't pay this." So I went out to Vernon Preston. I said, "This is not me. You know who this is?" And he said, "Oh, okay, I will take care of that."
You know, he said, "I don't want anybody to know about it." So, you know, and then everybody come in, he showed me. I said, "Elvis, my God," I said, "you don't want anybody to know about this?" Yeah, I said, "Everybody in town knows about it. You're talking about..." He just, you know, he couldn't keep a secret. Or he wanted you to keep a secret so he could tell it first.
Elvis kept one secret very well: his abuse of painkillers, stimulants, and sedatives. As the addiction raged, no single doctor knew how much medication Elvis was really taking.
We went over to this doctor's office, and while going over to the doctor's office, and we get out, and the doctor was on the second floor. We're walking up the steps, and he said, "I ought to get some good stuff." He knocked on that doctor's door. Now, I don't even think the doctor knew he was coming, and it was like almost after hours, and the doctor himself opens the door, and there stands Elvis Presley, which is the effect he had on people, and the doctor was just overwhelmed. Well, Elvis went in there and spent an hour and a half with our doctor. And he came out, and he had 4 prescriptions in his hand. But to show you what he does, we go back it was either the second or third time, and he bought the doctor a Lincoln Mark, and gave it to him because he knew he'd have the doctor in his pocket.
And when you got that kind of situation, I don't care who you put. You could have took all of us and removed us and put some of the best in there. And he'd have found a way. I mean, it's like with any drug addict. It didn't want to quit. He would have found a way to get around it. And by him having this kind of money and this kind of power, it was pretty easy.
One time, he said, "I want you to go to Vegas and call the Dr. Feelgood dentist and get me some stuff. I want you to fly out there and get it." Well, I made that trip 3 times in 2 days. Red and Sonny know this. I told Elvis, I said, "Look, I don't want to go back there again. You know, I'm tired." And I said, not only that, because I'd get 3 and 4 prescriptions at a time for him. And, you know, there's just so many drugstores in Vegas. So Sonny was out in L.A. and had Sonny fly to Vegas with me from L.A. I met him in L.A. and we flew to Vegas.
Right.
And half of them were put in his name and half in mine. And we went to these various drugstores and stayed at the Sahara for about an hour and a half, waiting for the plane to come back. And that's the extreme that he would go to.
I went to him and I said, "Man, this is having, your whole personality is changing. And it's because of this crap you're taking." And we had I thought, a real good talk. And he would listen to me, you know, and kind of agreed. And I left feeling good. Maybe we got something going here. God, the next morning, you were there. I walked in, and he stood up and said, "You listen to me." He says, "I know what I'm doing. I know what I need, and I don't need anybody telling me different."
You know, you want to say something, and you don't know how. You know, I mean, you just don't know what to do. I mean, he's done told you. In other words, stay the hell out of it. You know, this is me. You leave me alone. I know what I'm doing. And it made you, I mean, you got mad. I mean, there's so many times I left mad, you know, that, and you say, well, what are you going to do? You got 2 choices: quit and forget about it, and just watch him go on or stay and say, well, there'll be an opportunity.
Do what you can.
To do what you can,
Yeah.
you know. And
Unbelievable frustration.
We cared, and I'm not holding us up as being any angels, but we cared so much about him that, like Lamar said, it got to be a frustration. And like Billy says, what do? You know, you either go along with it, because if you're gone, you can't do nothing about it, or what have you. But that's why we had that relationship, and that's what people don't understand. That's why if he asked us to do something, why we did it and really didn't question it. But that stuff affected him a whole lot.
We'd been up all night.
Which was every day.
Every night. So finally, I don't know, 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, we were finally going to go to bed. So I took a sleeping pill, which we were all doing to sleep. I thought it was, you know, we were finally going to get some rest, and I hadn't even gone to sleep yet, and I heard this knock. Elvis wanted to go over to the doctor to get his throat supposedly moisturized or whatever. And I come storming out. I had all I could stand. I come storming out and say, God damn it, man, just go to sleep. You're going to be all right. You know, you don't need to be doing this shit all the time. He said, what? He went back in his bedroom and come out with this AK, whatever it was. And I see him coming out of his room, and I'm coming out of my room, and this guy that worked for us, this is the funny part, he was between us walking toward Elvis. He saw this gun. He was a very strange, we call him Brow. He just kind of eased over out of the way and leaned against the wall. He's waiting for the gunfire, you know. So go ahead and kill the son of a bitch, I'm out of the way. That's what if that's it, shoot.
Red said, go ahead, Elvis, you can shoot me. Is that what you want? Go ahead. Just go ahead and blow my damn brains out. And Elvis looked and said, don't push me, Red. And Red said, I'm not. And he walked. Red turned his head like that, and Elvis winked at me.
The fact of the matter is, and then I speak from experience, because like I said, I was almost as bad as he was. Until you yourself are ready to get off and understand that you don't have control, no matter what you're addicted to, food, alcohol, drugs, whatever, people can talk to their blue in the face. They ain't going to change.
It's very hard to look at someone and tell them, say, that's not Elvis. It's the drugs he's taking. He's getting this cortisone shots for his throat, which also will make a person mean. It'll change you. And he's loaded up, and that's for the moisture in his throat, so all this stuff. And it's very hard to tell someone at that point, like saying, Red, he's not himself, or this, that. It really doesn't matter to you at the time. You just can't accept it. That still doesn't give him the right to do this. So now we look back, hindsight 20/20 vision, we know and we accept the fact that it wasn't Elvis.
Some blamed Memphis physician Dr. George Nicopolis for recklessly feeding Elvis's drug dependency. Accused of overprescribing, could the man Elvis called Dr. Nick have prevented the ultimate tragedy?
First of all, he couldn't control Elvis. I mean, because Elvis worked him, boy, just the way he wanted to. You know, I mean, he had that ability. He got it caught up in Elvis's world, which was new to him, and so he was easy to take any way Elvis wanted to take him.
Elvis, one night around 3 o'clock in the morning, called down and said, asked me if I had any particular medicine. I said, no. He says, Sonny, he says, I need to talk to Dr. Nick. So he got on the phone, he called Dr. Nick and told me to get on there, and I got on there, and Nick said to me to come out to the house, and he would give me a shot for Elvis, because he wouldn't let Elvis have this stuff without it being controlled by him. So I had to drive out to Dr. Nick's house and come back and give that to Elvis, and he gave himself a shot. And at that time, I thought, man, Nick is really going too far by doing that, because he's giving him way too much. And I'll tell you the truth, Nick, I think, is a doctor with other patients besides Elvis. With Jerry Lee and some of the other people, he got in trouble because he prescribed medicine for him. And it's turned around and cost him.
Dr. Nick defended his treatment of Elvis before the Tennessee Board of Medical Examiners. He explained that Elvis needed amphetamines and painkillers before performing, and then relied on sedatives to relax after each show.
His highs, I might say, are not highs from the amphetamines that he used. These highs were highs from getting worked up at the show. These shows were very rewarding to him and very important to him, and he would really get high.
Cleared of wrongdoing in Elvis's case, Nicopolis later lost his license for over-medicating other patients. Meanwhile, Elvis continued to destroy himself.
See, legally, we couldn't do anything. We couldn't roll him up in something. We couldn't roll him up in something and commit him anywhere, because when he woke up, he could just get up, put his clothes on, and leave, because there was no legal hold on him. The only two people who could do it, Priscilla when she was married to him, and Vernon, and neither one of them.
Yeah, but it wasn't that bad until Priscilla left. 72, 73 was okay. Vernon was the only one that could do it.
It had to be getting bad. I mean, because let's say from that point on, it was disastrous.
Well, Billy, we did the tour, Elvis on tour, and we did the satellite show in 73.
But even at that, it was up and down. I mean, when I came on the scene, believe me, I already knew. So it had to be bad back then for me to recognize it that quick. I mean, look, I left the railroad, man, and went to work for him because of that. That's the only reason I came back.
It got to the point where the colonel would call up, and I was usually up there early, and he'd call and say, okay, what kind of shape's he in? Can you make it?
And people, I guess some of them blame us. Why didn't you do something? And that hurts, you know, it hurts. I'd done everything at the time I knew to do. I look back now and say, why didn't you do more? Why was you that stupid that you couldn't see it? But then that's...
What could you have done?
I don't know. You know, I still don't know what I could have done that I didn't do.
That's what I asked myself. What could I have done other than kicking in a door and kicking the shit out of somebody who was bringing it and then get fired for it? You know, but what
he
the hell
fires
can
you,
do?
then what can you do?
You want to reach and shake him and say, God, man, get a grip now. You've got it all going for you. Why throw it in the damn trash can? You've got everything going. You couldn't do that. You reach and grab him, and it's going to wind it up.
We've been called leeches, bloodsuckers, hangers-on, yes men, whatever. And we let you know. My opinion on that is that people say stuff because they think it makes them look good. They have no understanding of what the relation is.
Real quickly, for all those people that call us these names, you don't know what you were talking about, okay? Because he needed us there, and we were there. And if any of you think that we didn't try to stop him from taking these medications, you're full of it. You're full of it. Because we love this guy, and we saw what he was doing to himself. And we did try. We flushed expensive drugs down and had placebos made up in place and given to him. And he wasn't getting the buzz off of them.
Sugar, remember the capsules we poured sugar in forever?
But we did love this guy, and we were there, and he needed us as much as we needed him.
And I got news for you.
Yes, so that's where it comes down.
If we had not been, or a group of guys had not been around him that he could be himself, he would have died younger than 42.
In what may have been his ultimate act of self-destruction, Elvis turned on the friends who had stood by him for so long. He had Vernon do the dirty work, starting with a phone call to Sonny.
He said, I need to talk to you if you'll come out here to the office. And I'm thinking, what in the world? I'm thinking something's wrong with Elvis. He said, I need to talk to you. I said, well, go ahead, tell me over the phone. He said, no, I'd rather tell you in person. And I'm still thinking something's wrong. I said, well, what is it, Mr. Presley? Please, won't you tell me what is going on here? He says, well, I'd rather have done it in person, but what it is we're going to be cutting back on expenses, and we're going to have to let a few people go, and that's when it hit me. I said, oh, and I'm one of those people? He said, well, yes, you are. I said, who else is being let go? I'd rather not say. I want to tell each one of them individually. He said, there'll be others. And I thought, whoa. I said, okay, and I hung up the phone. I was in shock.
I can't explain the feeling. I just felt empty after all these years, after all we'd gone through, but I knew, you know, I'd gone and come back. I knew I'd never go back. I knew this was it. It was over forever.
Elvis was catching pressure from Colonel, from Vernon, and he didn't like being confronted by Red, Sonny, Dave. He didn't like it. To him, they had overstepped their boundaries. Now, I'm speaking totally for Elvis. I can't, this is all what I'm having to hear. And he felt like they were interfering and bringing all this more pressure on him. And he was literally fed up with it.
He didn't want to hear it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was gone because I walked around with a black cloud over my head because this stuff just makes you really depressed. And in a way, I think when he looked at me...
I don't think that's changed a lot.
No, it hadn't. And when he looked at me, it was like him looking in a mirror, you know, and he didn't want to see it.
When he done this firing, he also included Dick Grobe and Lamar. He said Lamar was another one that always coming to him and telling him what he needed to do and what he couldn't do and bitching all the time, as Elvis said. I said, well, Elvis, he's always done that. I mean, you know how he is, you know what? And I said, I totally don't understand why Dick Grobe. I said, you know, you've got to have some security. And he said, yeah, I guess you're right. He said, all right. He said, forget them two. So, I mean, he was literally going to clean house.
Hurt and angry, the fired men began to write a revealing book about life with Elvis. Before long, Sonny received a phone call from one of Elvis's attorneys, pleading with them to quit the project.
I said, John, it's too late. I said, we've already signed contracts, received our first payment on it, and we're up here doing it now. He says, well, I understand that. He says, don't worry about the money or the contract. If we come to an agreement here, you and Red and Dave, you can just get up, tell them that you're not going to do it, walk out, we'll take care of any lawsuits or take care of anything like that. And I'm thinking, oh, I said, so now we're talking about the money. He says, yes. He said, I'm asking you to give me a figure. Let's call it overdue severance pay. I said, that's a good way to put it, John, because that's just about what it really is. So I said, well, I'll talk with them. You can call back up here in a few minutes, because we won't, it's not something we're going to sit and hash out. We're either going to say yes or no, but I got to run it by them. I said, guys, whatever you want, I'll go with you, but I'd like for us to go ahead and put this challenge to him. They said, absolutely, that's it. So the phone rang, I went back to John O'Grady, and I said, he said, well, did you get a decision? I said, yes, we did. We don't feel that we should stop now, because if we don't go ahead, John, he's going to continue on, he's going to kill himself. But if we put this challenge to him, I'm sure he's going to try to make us a bunch of lying sons of bitches, boy. He's going to try to show that we're liars. So we're going to go ahead on with it. He said, I see. Okay, thank you. I hung up the phone.
Elvis was pretty paranoid by this time, because we're talking now about, this was 76. My cousin Patsy, her name was Patsy Presley, her maiden name, and she had a son named Jimmy. And him and another kid was playing with BB guns. Anyway, he had this BB gun that looked like, you know, had a scope on it and all this kind of stuff. It looked like a real gun. Well, why Elvis was looking out the window, I have no idea, but he was. And boy, he panicked, and he goes in and he comes out with this machine gun.
Good Lord.
And I think it was Dick that actually caught him. I mean, he was getting ready to rip loose. I mean, you know, this was, and he was, like I say, he had taken all of his medication, and he was pretty much out of it. And had it not been for Dick, I don't know what had happened, but Dick told him, said, no, Elvis, no. Said, that's Jimmy. And, of course, it took him a second. Hell, he forgot who Jimmy was, I guess, and he said, you know, it's Patsy's son. Oh, okay. He said, man, you tell them damn kids, they don't need to be playing with guns like that. And he was dead serious. I mean, it's just, yeah, I mean, he was, I mean, he didn't know. He thought somebody was going to shoot up. That looked like I say, from the angle to him, I guess it looked like it was aiming at his window. And boy, I mean, he was ready to cut loose, and I thought, oh, God.
It was really, really scary.
When it was bad, it was just pure misery. I mean, because you're afraid all the time. I didn't like leaving him alone.
I'll tell you how bad it gets. He was laying across the bed, and I said, you know, he's not moving. I said, you know, I shook him, and I said, are you awake? And no reaction. So everybody went down the hall and got the big trash cans full of ice, and we threw him in the bathtub, ran water in there, and stuck him into the ice in the water to bring him around. And I think it was in Houston, and he did the show, and he did about 35, 40 minutes. And I was sitting on the bus, and he walked by me. He said, let me ask you a question. I said, what's that? He said, where are we? I said, you were just in Houston. He said, oh. Went back, sat down, and I got up, and I said, Are you serious? Yeah. I went and sat back down. I said, my God. People in Houston went berserk. I mean, they were like mad at him and booing him and the whole thing. He actually did not even know that he didn't know where he was.
Elvis continued to tour as his health grew worse. A television special taped 8 weeks before his death documented how far the king had fallen.
It made me mad that they would allow him to be shown.
Me too.
That way.
We'd seen him in pretty bad shape a year earlier.
Yeah, but not that bad.
But when I saw that special, I said, God, my God.
And we hadn't seen him that whole year on anything. There was no film or anything out on him, no pictures taken of him. So from the time we left, when he weighed probably about 215, 220, he was overweight. But by the time we left, and then he put on like 35 pounds that year. Lamar said he's 255 pounds when he passed
I got
away.
tears in my eyes when I watched that, and it was almost looking like death formed over. I mean, the way his face,
He was real bloated.
the way his
really
face
just,
looked,
you know,
and as big as his body
tremendous
was,
fluid.
see him sweating the way he was sweating. And
I cried too. And even everything that had gone on between us for all these 20-something years, bad and good, I broke down.
They should have never, I looked at him, he was getting ready to go on stage in Springfield, and I looked at him, I said, you don't feel good at all. And he said, no, I don't. He said, I really...
Even before I left, we met just fooling around, we'd wrestle and whatever, and I noticed if I grabbed his arm and let go, it stayed, my handprint was there.
the marks were there.
And,
That's
That's
water
called
retention.
water retention, man. I mean, it was like...
No, his body just quit working.
Everybody, most of us in this world think the grass is greener on the other side, and it ain't. You need to take a good look at your own life and find out how good you got it, because here's a guy who was the most famous entertainer in history, who died unhappy, who died sick, who died at the young age of 42, and the crime of it all is he didn't have to.
And now, here are scenes from The Legend Lives On, Volume 6 of All the King's Men.
When he did, he broke his little finger. And it was kind of laid up here on his back of his hand, so we took him to the doctor. And the doctor x-rayed it, set it, put it in the cast. Well, he put the cast up rather high, and Elvis says, Doc, he said, do you think that you could maybe make that cast a little shorter? He said, look, he said, I don't tell you how to sing, don't tell me how to put a cast on. Elvis said, yeah, but said, I have to wear your damn cast, but you don't have to listen to my singing.
I said, I'm out of here, I quit. Can't quit, you're fired. I said, whatever. And then he got around in front of me and started yelling at me. And I yelled back, and all of a sudden he drew back and hit me. And it's knocked my head to the side and everything. I turned back around, and literally tears came to my eyes. I said, Elvis, I never thought you could do that. And I was crushed, I really was. And I walked. And I was getting my stuff packed, man. I'd called a cab, and he came in and said, Sonny, what's going on here? I said, I don't know, man. You've changed this year. You're not the same person I met in 58. You're not the same person I went to work for a year ago. I said, I don't know what you're doing, but you're just not the same.
He knew how to push the buttons, and when he pushed them, I mean, I've read myself, Sonny, Marty, I've seen us all double up. I mean, he's doubled us up in pain because he knew what to do, because we were so loyal. If I ever learned anything in my life, even to this day, I learned loyalty from being around him and this group.